Vice President Kamala Harris just secured probably one of the most important endorsements she could get, the Obamas. Let's watch.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Brock, this means so much to me. I'm looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
Harris also got support from the cast of RuPaul's Drag Race this week. She became the first sitting vice president to appear on the show. Let's watch.
Hi, everyone. It's Kamala Harris. Each day, we are seeing our rights and freedoms under attack, including the right of everyone to be who they are, love who they love, openly and with pride. So as we fight back against these attacks, let's all remember, no one is alone. We are all in this together. And your vote is your power. So please make sure your voice is heard this November and register to vote at vote.gov.
Can I get an amen?
Amen! Now on with the show.
And remember, you better vote.
And in a push to capitalize on the memes and viral videos, Harris joined TikTok.
Madam Vice President, are you on TikTok?
Well, I've heard that recently I've been on the For You page, so I thought I'd get on here myself.
A new Axios Generation Lab poll found that in a Harris-Trump race, 60% of voters aged 18 to 34 years old would vote for Harris, while 40% would vote for Trump.
Now, Harris is definitely capitalizing on her momentum with the youth vote. Here's a glimpse at Harris's first campaign ad, which features Beyonce's Freedom song that quickly went viral.
We choose freedom.
Freedom, freedom, I can't move. Freedom.
Now, I think Kamala shows that while she looks younger than her age, she's definitely 60 years old, talking on speakerphone with the phone up to her head. She does not have as many wrinkles as other 60-year-olds, but she still has some boomer qualities, Amber.
Yeah, I gotta say, this to me feels like Hillary 2.0. This is trying to capture celebrity, trying to capture memes. This is giving Pokemon go to the polls. But there was nothing in any of these videos really about things that really matter to the American people. The only policy issue that she talked about in any of those was on the RuPaul's Drag Race appearance, where she talked about, again, Trump being a threat to democracy. And we know from the polling so far that democracy is barely a top 5 issue for voters. And when you look at the breakdown of who voters trust more on democracy, Trump usually outpaces or was outpacing Biden. We'll have to see what that matchup looks like against Kamala Harris. But Batya Ungar-Sargon had a good tweet, I thought, about this, where she said, "What's wild about this call," referring to the endorsement from the Obamas, "is there's nothing about the American people. It's all how proud the Obamas are of Harris and how grateful and excited she is. It's a performance of celebrity friendship replacing politics, policy, or any thought of the struggling American electorate."
Now, I think Kamala's speeches on the trail, she's been stumping pretty hard. I've been watching her speeches in North Carolina and her speech in Wisconsin. She was very focused on combating Project 2025. We don't know a lot about Trump's platform, which is interesting because he's been in office before and he's been running for much longer than Kamala Harris. But I feel like I have a better sense of the type of presidency we'd get from Kamala, because while we do have Project 2025 and it was written by 6 of his closest aides when he was the president, he's said that that's not his plan. And so I have a big question as to what it is, because we've had Kamala Harris talk about lowering taxes on middle and working class Americans, resisting the talks of cuts to Social Security and Medicare, talking about ushering in, green energy in a way that Joe Biden began, but didn't quite go to the extent to a lot of Democrats wanting to see that industry take hold. And so, yes, the first campaign ad, we're getting a lot of vibes-based stuff. It's good to set the scene for what the vibe of the campaign is, but it seems that in her rallies that don't get as much of a viral moment, she is focused on policy. And I think I'd like to see her use her TikTok to communicate those policies, because Hillary's big problem was she was in on the joke. She was trying to make the joke. With Kamala, it's Kamala HQ, it's her staff, it's people who support her campaign. The Coconut Army was an organic online movement. Brat Summer was organic as well. But the moment she touches that and starts producing that kind of content herself, it will become cringe in the same way as Hillary. So she's toting a fine line, and I hope we get those policy videos on TikTok. Kamala, if you're listening, it's an open book test. I'm not the first one to say it.
Yeah, just to get to a little bit about Trump's agenda and what his policies are, because you said you haven't seen much of it outside of Project 2025, which he says is not his. He does have Agenda 47, which is on his website. It's donaldjtrump.com/platform. Agenda 47. You can read all about his policies on there. He also spoke for 90 plus minutes at the Republican National Convention, at least an hour of which was dedicated to what he viewed as being important in his second term. So I just don't think it's accurate to say that he hasn't shared what a second Trump term would look like. He also did a long-running or a long-form Time interview a couple of months ago where he was asked about a lot of policy questions, specifically on immigration. And on the question of Project 2025, I think it's interesting that the left has focused so much on this, because it's basically the equivalent of telling people to Google the Center for American Progress. It's just a conservative, right-leaning think tank that has come up with a platform that it would like to see in a future administration, and then has created a database of individuals who might staff that administration. This is no different than what any left-leaning think tank in Washington, D.C. does on a regular basis. The only reason that Project 2025 is getting attention is because this is the first time that a conservative think tank has actually been somewhat organized in a way that is comparable, I think, to the left.
Yeah, I think having 6 folks who are his cabinet secretaries be the authors that pen the 90-page document is making people pay a little bit closer attention to it and associate it with Trump more than maybe other think tanks and other publications, ones on the left as well. And so I think that's why. I've heard Trump's speech both at the RNC and his most recent appearance at his campaign rally, and I think that there's this thing that a lot of American voters like, and it makes sense because so many people in Washington are these elites. I've felt misunderstood by Washington my entire life. I mean, I remember when Wall Street was bailed out, and my dad, who built houses for a living with his own 2 hands, was struggling to keep our own. And that doesn't make sense, because you have these bankers that destroyed the housing market and they're doing fine. They're keeping their homes. And, I just never felt like Washington not only understood us, but had our best interests at heart. And so speaking to working class issues is something that Vance and Trump have really made a focus of their campaign. But I have not heard what the plan is or the impact is around making life better for working people. Understanding the issues is good. And I think a lot of voters look for that. But I think we're at a point where, sure, you can give lip service to the issues, but how will we fix them? What is the solution to them? And I don't think a lot of average American voters are reading campaign policy platforms on the website. Communicating that in person over video and over voice is really where we're at now when it comes to reaching voters. So I think that's why Kamala has to do it. That's why Trump has to do it. That's why RFK Jr., he's been doing it, I think, more than these 2 candidates and even Biden before it was Kamala, to be honest with you. And so I think the reason they're not doing it is because being non-committal to policy makes it easier to get in public office and fight for corporate interests like we've seen the Uniparty do for so long. And I think candidates like RFK Jr. and pressure from young voters is what's going to make the difference and get these people to really talk about policy and make commitments.
Yeah, policy talk is, of course, important. I think that's why the American people, when polled, say that they trust Trump more on the economy, trust him more on immigration, trust him more on crime, and basically all of the top 5 to 6 issues for voters on the with the exception of abortion. But I would also say, going back to the comparison between the Heritage Foundation and the Center for American Progress, and the point that you made about how there are 6 former Trump officials who were working with the Heritage Foundation on the policy document that is with Project 2025, I would point out that there were a lot of people from the Center for American Progress that went to work for the Biden administration, including John Podesta, who was a founder of the Center for American Progress. He was one of the energy czars that Biden brought on board. Neera Tanden was the Center for American Progress's president from 2011 to 2021. She was brought on as a senior advisor and staff secretary in 2021. There are emails between fellows at the Center for American Progress and the Biden administration where they're talking about policy issues and potential policy platforms and prescriptions that the Biden administration would put in place. So all of these supposed connections between the Heritage Foundation and the Trump campaign are things that exist with left-wing think tanks and the Biden administration. So I just am not catching the difference here, except for the fact that it appears to be an attempt to fearmonger that Trump is going to take every single bullet point off of Project 2025 and implement it into his administration. It is not atypical at all, again, for a conservative-leaning think tank or a left-leaning think tank to communicate or coordinate to some extent with an incoming administration that likely agrees with them on some, maybe not all of the issues.
Yeah, I think Trump has his work definitely cut out for him, because saying things like, I agree with some of it, but not all of it, and people seeing things like getting rid of the Board of Education, making cuts to Social Security and Medicare, policies that they really care about, they're worried that maybe those are the ones he likes. And maybe the other stuff in Project 2025, the stuff that he doesn't like, is stuff that they haven't read about yet. And I think he's going to have to address the thing people are most concerned about, making a commitment around whether or not he plans to cut Social Security and Medicare once in office. He talks a lot about how they're going to reduce the deficit and have a surplus and all of these great fiscal promises. You know, I don't think they're great. I think it's a misunderstanding of macroeconomics, but that's what he's promising. And whenever we talk about austerity in America, there's always a conversation around Social Security and Medicare, and that's something Republicans have talked about as well. So I think he really is going to need to make clear the things about Project 2025 that have been in the media that people are afraid are a part of the conservative agenda. He's going to have to address those to get over this Project 2025 hurdle. And J.D. Vance talking about it as well is just bringing more and more attention to it. And so I think as long as he addresses Americans' biggest concerns around overstepping the bounds of the executive branch, him potentially cutting the social safety net, one that J.D. Vance relied on to get where he is today, they're going to have to address the biggest concerns in order to get over this.
Yes, and Vance has been very clear that he does not want to get rid of the social safety net, and this is actually one of the reasons why the Republican establishment, meaning the supposed fiscal conservatives who are not in line with the populist reinvention of the Republican Party, were very upset when he was chosen as the vice presidential pick for Trump. Vance in 2023 went on War Room with Steve Bannon and said this: "There are people who would cut Social Security, throwing our grandparents into poverty so that one of Zelensky's ministers can buy a bigger yacht. Kiss my ass, it's not happening." So I don't think you can get any clearer than that. We're going to have to leave it there. We'll be back with more after this.